We don't pay builders to speak up. Just follow orders. Caleb Whitman's voice cracked, like a whip through the blazing heat of the construction site. The newly appointed chief engineer had just made his authority known, and all eyes turned to one man. Malik Carter, a 45-year-old black man, dressed in a dust-covered work uniform, still holding a rolled-up blueprint in one hand. Just minutes earlier, Malik had calmly stepped forward with a warning. The foundation design on the northeast corner could collapse if it's not reinforced. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply pointed to a small flaw in the plans, an observation backed by 20 years of experience on job sites like this one. But what he got in return was public humiliation. Caleb burst out laughing, turning to the line of young engineers in crisp white shirts standing behind him. So now construction workers do math? Maybe we should hand him a Stanford engineering degree while we're at it. Laughter rippled through the group. A few engineers smirked. Some workers dropped their heads. Malik stood still, his eyes quiet. Not angry, just still. As if this wasn't the first time he'd heard something like that. And the truth is, it wasn't. But what no one knew, what Caleb didn't see coming, was that the man he'd just mocked as the builder who does math had already set something in motion, something invisible but perfectly placed. A single move, one tiny piece of a larger puzzle that just hours later would bring the entire site and Caleb himself crashing to the ground in the most jaw-dropping twist no one saw coming. Don't blink. Because this wasn't just an insult. It was the beginning of a historic reckoning. After the last round of laughter died down, the meeting wrapped up quickly. Malik Carter didn't argue. He didn't look at anyone. He simply folded up his blueprint, gathered a few scribbled notes, and quietly walked away from the meeting area, like a shadow fading into the heat. No one spoke up for him. No one checked in. To most of the young engineers, this was just a lesson for someone who crossed the line. To the veteran workers, it was a scene all too familiar. A black man daring to speak up and being silenced just as quickly. He's done for, someone whispered under their breath. A builder correcting the chief engineer? He's lucky if he still has a job tomorrow. Another one chuckled. Caleb Whitman, meanwhile, stayed seated, one arm draped over the back of his chair, wearing a look of smug satisfaction. For him, publicly humiliating Malik wasn't just about enforcing the hierarchy. It was his first power play since being appointed to the site. But just 10 minutes later, the phone in Caleb's vest pocket buzzed. A message from headquarters. Thomas Blake will be visiting the site. Prepare to receive him within 15 minutes. Caleb's face went pale. Thomas Blake, chairman of Blake Works Construction, a legend in the industry, a man who almost never showed up at job sites unless something was seriously wrong or something off the record needed urgent inspection. Caleb shot up from his chair like he'd been struck by lightning. Get everything ready. Wipe down the equipment. Put up the progress boards. And not a word about what just happened, you hear me? In the commotion, no one noticed the figure in the distance. Malik, walking calmly toward an old pickup truck parked near the tool shed. His face was serene, but in his hand was a phone. And the message he'd just sent? That was the signal. The game was about to change. In the executive trailer behind the construction site, Chief Engineer Caleb Whitman stood in front of the foundation blueprint, his face showing not even a flicker of concern. It's fine, he muttered, then turned to his assistant. Relax. Headquarters already signed off. Just stick to the plan. Cutting down the rebar in the foundation, reducing the high-strength cement by 15%. All of it had been optimized from the top down, to shave off over $1 million from the budget. Caleb acted like he was leading some kind of financial masterstroke, not steering an entire structure toward potential collapse. Every shortcut report, every vague decision had been rubber-stamped. Not a single line mentioned feedback from the workers. No one remembered Malik Carter, the man who had quietly marked up design flaws again and again. No one read the handwritten notes he'd submitted to the office with a simple message attached: possible risk of severe settlement in the northeast corner. All of it ignored, all of it dismissed. And then, when he finally spoke up directly at that morning's meeting, what he got in return wasn't acknowledgement. It was humiliation. Malik had stood "We don't pay builders," hands rough and calloused, streaked with drying cement. A man with real-world knowledge that reached far beyond the clean lines of those theoretical blueprints. But to the system, he didn't have a degree. He didn't have a title. And that meant he didn't have a voice. The very man trying to save the structure was the one cast out and publicly shamed. His belief in a fair system betrayed by the very thing he believed in. The sound of an engine rumbled through the sweltering summer air. A black Mercedes S-Class glided smoothly through the construction site gates, its polished body catching glints of golden dust beneath the midday sun. Work stopped instantly. Engineers, technicians, even the site supervisors all turned to stare as the sleek car pulled up near the executive trailer. From the driver's seat, a sharply dressed bodyguard in a black suit stepped out and gently opened the back door, with the kind of respect reserved for someone important. And then, a black man in a deep navy suit stepped out, calm eyes, purposeful stride, a fine leather briefcase in hand. The entire site fell silent. Caleb Whitman stumbled forward, visibly rattled. "Wow, welcome, sir. It's an honor to have you here. Elijah." "Carter?" The man didn't answer. He simply removed his sunglasses, revealing a familiar pair of eyes. The same eyes that just that morning had stared at a blueprint, dust-covered beneath a worker's helmet. One of the workers whispered under his breath, That's Malik. He's been with the concrete crew for weeks." The whole site froze. Caleb's voice cracked. No way. You're the owner?" The man gave a small nod. His voice was calm, deep, steady. "I'm Elijah Malik Carter, founder and CEO of Carter Build Tech." No one could speak. Elijah turned to Caleb, meeting his eyes. "This morning I didn't respond, because I wanted to see if someone like you could actually hear someone you thought was just mixing cement. No shouting, no anger, just the truth, spoken plainly." And in that moment, the entire site bowed their heads, not because of his title, but because they'd all underestimated the worth of a man they thought they knew. Caleb Whitman stood frozen in the middle of the emergency meeting room, sweat dripping down his temples, even though the AC was blasting at 64 degrees. Across from him sat Elijah Carter, no longer just a builder, but now unmistakably the powerful chairman of the company. Silent, focused, methodically flipping through pages of full-color reports. Suddenly, the large screen behind him lit up. Elijah turned around. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut like steel. "I want everyone to hear this. Very carefully." A recording began to play. It was Caleb's voice, cold, arrogant. "We go by the math. We don't need guys who can't even read a ruler speaking up." The room went dead silent. A few engineers lowered their heads. Some flushed red. Others' hands started to shake. Elijah didn't comment. He simply snapped his fingers. Amira, the head of internal compliance, rose from her seat. "We've completed a full technical audit of the last 3 months." She clicked to the second slide. 17 major violations appeared on screen. Substandard concrete used in foundational structures. Rebar replaced with uncertified material. Inspection reports forged with fake signatures from site supervisors. Caleb jumped in, trying to defend himself. These were just cost-saving measures. I was following directives from upper management. Amira calmly flipped to the next page. It showed a cost reduction proposal for foundation budget optimization, signed directly by Caleb Whitman. Attached to it was a $320,000 project efficiency bonus he was scheduled to receive. Elijah lifted the folder, his tone still steady, but sharp as a blade. When you cut corners on concrete, when you swap out steel for profit, you're not optimizing budgets, Caleb. He looked straight into Caleb's eyes. You were slicing through trust, and now, that same arrogance is coming back to bury you. The late afternoon sun cast a golden hue across the towering cranes, bathing Horizon's massive construction site in light. Every engineer, technician, and worker had been summoned to the main yard. Something big was about to happen. On a makeshift platform built from scaffolding, Elijah Carter stood tall. Wearing a simple suit, but radiating quiet authority, he placed a white envelope on the table beside him. Next to him stood Caleb Whitman, pale, his hands clasped tightly in front of him, trying to hide their trembling. Elijah looked out across the entire team, only meaning. We build monumental structures, but if the foundation of trust cracks, the whole empire will collapse. Then he turned to Caleb. His voice was low, but rang through the yard like a bell. You have two options. 1. Be terminated immediately and face legal action for misconduct and document fraud. Or 2. Resign voluntarily, return every dollar of the bonus you wrongfully claimed, and spend the next 6 months as a volunteer trade instructor for underprivileged youth. The air stood still. From the back, Walter, a senior worker who'd been with the company for over 20 years, gave a silent nod. Everyone understood. This wasn't just about one man. This was a turning point, a redefinition of what the system stood for. Elijah turned back to the crowd. I'm Elijah Carter. Many of you knew me as Malik, the ordinary builder. But today I don't stand here as your boss. I stand as someone who was once ignored. To say this, at Horizon, every voice matters. No one is too small to be heard. No one spoke. But then, a few claps, scattered at first, then more and more. It wasn't celebration. It was recognition. What seemed at first like a personal confrontation quickly erupted into a full-blown reckoning that shook the entire foundation of Horizon from the inside out. Just one day after that announcement on the job site, Elijah Carter signed an executive order, a sweeping investigation into Horizon's entire management structure, from site supervisors all the way up to the financial and materials approval departments. This was no longer about Caleb Whitman alone. Internal interviews were held back-to-back. Employees who had once been dismissed, silenced, or warned for talking too much were now invited to speak freely, without fear. Old emails, once ignored, petitions buried in backlogs, everything was brought to light. A 186-page report, compiled by Horizon's Special Audit Task Force, revealed a disturbing truth. More than 47 safety alerts over the past 2 years had been brushed aside. 9 material substitutions, all below standard, had been quietly approved by the same review team. And 23 employees had been threatened with termination, simply for daring to speak up. Elijah read every line with heavy eyes. He wasn't angry, but he was unwavering. The failure didn't come from one bad decision, he said. It came from a system that got too comfortable ignoring voices from below. That same week, Horizon launched a groundbreaking new policy titled equal voice response protocol. Here's what it meant. Any employee, from laborers to technicians to janitors, could now submit reports directly to the Safety and HR Board. Every report must receive a response within 72 hours. No retaliation would be tolerated under any circumstances. From that day forward, a new quote was etched in bold letters across the wall of Horizon's engineering office. Silence once cracked our foundation. Now, every voice will help build it. 6 months had passed since the day Caleb Whitman was given a choice: termination or redemption through action. He didn't disappear quietly. Instead, he chose to stay, signing on as a temporary instructor for a vocational training program launched by Horizon. The program focused on young people from underserved communities, particularly Black youth. On the first day, the students eyed him warily. They knew who he was. They knew how he'd once looked down on someone just like them. But they also saw him standing there, not in a tailored suit, not with that smug tone of authority, but as a man, plain, honest, holding a piece of chalk, ready to teach. It wasn't easy to outrun the past, but Caleb started from the beginning, quietly, teaching basic formulas again, correcting every small line in their drawings, spending hours breaking down how a single steel rod could impact the load-bearing structure of an entire building. One rainy afternoon, after staying 2 extra hours to help a struggling student catch up, Caleb stepped out into the corridor, shirt flecked with dust and concrete. That's when Elijah Carter happened to walk by. "I thought you'd quit halfway," Elijah said, his voice unreadable. Caleb exhaled, tired, but lighter. "So did I," he replied, glancing back toward the classroom. "At first I thought this was punishment, but then I realized I'm learning more from these kids than I've ever taught in my life." He just gave a small nod, for the first time, a gesture of real recognition. And beneath the fading evening light, framed by the scaffolding behind him, a man once blinded by arrogance had truly begun the work of becoming someone new. 6 months after Horizon Construction launched its pilot mentoring program, 52 trainees had secured full-time employment. Many of them had previously worked as temp laborers, never once imagining they could build real careers in professional construction. But this wasn't just about trade skills. They were trained in leadership, in teamwork, and perhaps most importantly, they learned how to listen and how to be heard. Elijah Carter, known once on site as Malik, hadn't just restructured Horizon's executive leadership. He redesigned how the company operated at its core. Where once every technical decision came from the executive office, several floors removed from the work site, now, once a week, site reps, lead technicians, and even interns had the opportunity to present their concerns directly to the board of directors. And they were listened to. No middlemen, no dismissals for lack of credentials. From minor feedback on the curvature of steel bracing to suggestions for safer scheduling to reduce on-site accidents, every voice was acknowledged, every issue transparently addressed. Horizon evolved into a two-way system of communication, from the ground up and from the office down. A true conversation, where lived experience informed executive decisions and leadership extended its hand in return. During a sit-down interview, a construction journalist asked Elijah, "So what did you rebuild Horizon with? New technology? Stronger steel? A better team?" Elijah smiled, gently replying, "I rebuilt it with respect. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how tall the building stands. If its foundation isn't built on trust, understanding, and the strength of human dignity, a weak foundation will collapse any building, and a company that doesn't listen will collapse just the same. That quote from Elijah Carter didn't just echo through the construction world. It became a mantra, repeated by management experts, leadership consultants, and university professors across the country. After the incident on site, Horizon Construction wasn't just restructured, it was transformed into a national case study for leadership and organizational reform. More than 20 top universities, from engineering schools to business programs, began teaching Horizon as a real-world model for ethical leadership. At Harvard Business School, a case study titled "The Carter Model: When Respect Becomes the Foundation for Performance and Innovation" was added to the curriculum. At MIT, Horizon's two-way listening model was tested in tech startup incubators. The results were stunning. Teams that adopted the model showed a 35% increase in productivity and a 60% drop in early-stage turnover within just 6 months. Major corporations began reaching out to Horizon, eager to study its internal training systems, especially its groundbreaking method of gathering feedback directly from frontline workers. For years, that voice had been ignored. Now, it was being replicated. From a single moment of public humiliation on a dusty job site, Elijah Carter had turned pain into purpose, and purpose into reform. Not just for one company, but for an entire industry. At a national leadership summit, HR expert Clara West summed it up in one unforgettable sentence. Horizon doesn't just build structures. They rebuilt the meaning of respect and proved it can be measured in performance, loyalty, and profit. In the grand lobby of Horizon's newly completed headquarters, once the very site of arrogance and prejudice, a gleaming bronze plaque now hangs with quiet dignity. We build with materials, but we build respect with humility. Etched beneath it, Elijah Carter, founder, Horizon Construction. The journey from humiliated laborer to pioneering CEO of corporate culture didn't end in revenge, but in something far deeper: transformation of people, of values, of legacy. Caleb Whitman, once the embodiment of arrogance and discrimination, now stood shoulder to shoulder with Elijah at the graduation ceremony of Horizon's vocational program for underprivileged youth. He read each graduate's name aloud with genuine pride, no trace of condescension in his voice. And when interviewed, he said quietly, "I thought I was here to teach them how to build. Turns out, they were the ones teaching me how to be human." Elijah never needed to take anyone down. He led with truth, with professional ethics, and most of all, with the courage to give someone who had failed the chance to rise again. To the media, it was hailed as a bold corporate revolution. To the workers, it was the quiet justice they had waited for years. And, to Elijah Carter, the greatest victory wasn't defeating an enemy. It was turning one into the most powerful revenge, is helping the one who once belittled you become someone worthy of respect.